Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Regenerative Plasma Exchange Get Answers to Your Questions webinar. I am Lindsay Jost, and I am one of the nurse practitioners and clinicians here at the MaxWell Clinic. I am also privileged to be one of the overseeing clinicians for our Regenerative Plasma Exchange program. And what I am going to do this evening is go through all of your top questions. We've been up and at 'em in the Regenerative Plasma Exchange world for a couple of years now. And so over that period of time, we've had the opportunity to really harvest a lot of patient questions and inquiries and things that we get most frequently. And so what we thought we would do this evening is just kind of break that down and really have more of a casual conversation about Regenerative Plasma Exchange, what it is, what it means, how it works, our process here at our clinic, how is it accessible. We're hoping that this gets out far and wide so that if there are any curiosities on Regenerative Plasma Exchange, that after this webinar and our time together this evening, those boxes have been checked, those questions have been answered, or at least you have resources to go to the next steps for where you go from here, so that way you can quench your curiosity thirst on all things Regenerative Plasma Exchange. So I'm just kind of giving everybody a couple minutes to hop on and log in and get comfy. Maybe you are at home after a long day of work, or maybe you're still at work. Either one. I just want to give everybody a couple minutes to log on, and I'll reorient here as well. So we are almost at the 2-minute mark. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in, because this evening, brace yourselves, we have a lot of content, which is really exciting. So again, I'm Lindsay Jost. I'm one of the nurse practitioners here at the MaxWell Clinic. I'm also one of the overseeing clinicians for our Regenerative Plasma Exchange program. And tonight, this is your Regenerative Plasma Exchange FAQ Get Answers to Your Questions webinar. So let's dive in. So what is Regenerative Plasma Exchange? That's the question on everybody's mind. So let's talk about the basics. Well, in order to talk about the basics, we have to kind of know how it works, because you might be thinking to yourself, I don't even know what you're talking about. Okay, let's strip it down. So here you have an illustration of a plasma exchange participant, a patient, if you will. What happens is we actually put 2 IV catheters, one in each arm, into the patient. Their old blood, the blood that has been circulating in their body, gets taken out of one of the arms. And then it goes into a plasma exchange, which is also known as apheresis. So you may hear those words interchangeable. We're talking about the same process and procedure. So regenerative plasma exchange or apheresis device. The device itself actually centrifuges, it spins, and it separates the plasma component of the blood from the red blood cell component. The plasma component gets wasted and removed, as you can see from the image here. And then the blood cells are saved, and they're actually transported down to another part of the machine. Then we have albumin. So we'll go into the details of what albumin is a little later in this talk, but for now, just to explain how it works, we then put replacement albumin in and mix them with your blood cells that we had just removed from the blood that was circulating in the system. And this new, fresh replacement albumin mixed with your cells gets infused back into the body. So it's a full circle process. This is just the general basics of how plasma exchange works. This is a face you might know and love, or that is familiar to you. This is our fearless leader, Dr. David Hazy. And so here is a photo in real life, not illustrated, of how this works. So as you can see on the left-hand side here, we have a photo where you can see both IV lines in each arm. One of these lines is going into the machine and extracting out the old blood, and the other line is infusing in the replacement albumin and red blood cell combination. And it's happening, it's kind of like a symphony and a dance. It happens pretty simultaneously. Over here, you can kind of see our plasma exchange or apheresis device that he is connected to. And let's get a little close and personal with the device itself, just so you're familiar with all the parts and pieces. So to the left is a more broad overview. We've got our general screen here that gives us all our parameters and that we can kind of run the machine by. We have all of these beautiful bags, these bottles that you can see flipped over, which if we look to the image to the right, you can get a little bit more up close and personal, but that's the albumin that I referenced in the initial slide. Back behind here, we've got a little normal saline. We've got a little anticoagulant that helps in the separation process of the plasma and the red blood cells. And this, ladies and gentlemen, this wonderful yellow looking substance, that is the old plasma in this bag here. And this actually gets dumped into this little red bag that you can see a little bit better on the picture on the left, but you can see it a little bit on the picture on the right as well. And that's the waste plasma. All these wonderful little tubes and colors help work in simpatico together to make that process seamless. So that is a general overview of how the procedure itself works. So how did this happen? How do we think to ourselves, why would we ever do this? And what is the benefit? And how did this come to be from an optimization standpoint? Well, it's because of mice and parabiosis. So there is a study that happened a while back where they sewed two mice together, an old mouse and a young mouse, poor little things, and they hobbled along together. And what they found was really, really interesting. The old mouse actually got a little younger and the young mouse got a little older. So what does this say to us? This is like, wait a second. So shifting out and removing the toxins and oxidized molecules that build up in time as we age can actually create neural stem cell proliferation, increased blood flow. They noticed enhanced olfaction, which is an enhanced sense of smell, skeletal muscle rejuvenation. This is unbelievable. So this got us thinking, how could we do this in humans to increase longevity and quality of life? Then there was the AMBAR study. This is a cornerstone of why we do what we do here at the MaxWell Clinic. The AMBAR stands for Alzheimer's Management by Albumin Replacement. The AMBAR trial was key in creating the idea that this could be really beneficial for those who had cognitive decline. So the primary objective of the AMBAR trial, which is something that you'll hear a lot throughout this talk, and then if you come and engage further with us for Regenerative Plasma Exchange, the primary objective is really to see the efficacy of plasma exchange by measuring variations in cognitive function and carrying out daily activities of living. So they took mild to moderate stage patients with Alzheimer's disease. You can see here there are 496 participants. And by the time you get to mild to moderate stages of this, the cognitive abilities are pretty well advanced. So they took these patients and they did one plasma exchange a week for 6 weeks in a row of the full volume exchange. They then did mini exchanges following that over a 14-month period of time. They measure their progress through neuroimaging, mini mental state exams, and other standard cognitive tools. And what they found was remarkable. So the global function, how somebody is able to function in their daily life overall, what we expect to see is where this red arrow is going. You know, in neurodegeneration, the thing about it is that it tends to only have one trajectory, and that is down. The only question and predominant variable per individual is how fast that's going to happen. So whenever we looked at this AMBAR trial and we saw that the results actually showed a 61% less decline over a 14-month period of time, that is the definition of hope. It is unbelievable. There have been countless trials from the pharmaceutical companies trying to find a drug that could influence Alzheimer's progression or cognitive decline in this way, and it just hasn't been found. So as you can see from this graph, the beginning part here is that once a week for 6 weeks, and then they did those mini exams a little bit further out. But the 61% less decline is just, it is getting to a point where if you know this information, you can't not consider this a treatment or possible option for those who are suffering from mild to moderate Alzheimer's. So we're going to look at this a little bit more because it's really interesting. So what they broke down for their results and what we have seen is that, as you can tell, in all patients, there was an improvement versus those here in the red line who did not move forward with plasma exchange. In moderate Alzheimer's, there is also a notable difference between the two, but in mild Alzheimer's, they didn't just slow progression, they got better. They got better. This is huge. So the earlier in the memory loss process that one begins plasma exchange treatments, the more benefit one will likely achieve from the data that we've seen so far. Many people seek us out for longevity promotion even before memory loss begins. So if you say to yourself, I'm doing okay from a cognition standpoint, however, I'm aging and I'd like to optimize, regenerative plasma exchange has a place in that realm as well. The most benefit occurred during the time of weekly plasma exchanges. So if you'll notice, just in the circled areas here, the biggest jump between decline, which is the blue line, and improvement or clinical effect, which is the pink line, happened during that weekly burst, that first 6 weeks. So the more frequent and higher volume plasma exchanges, that is better from what we're seeing than less frequent. And we use this information whenever we are customizing patient recommendations and orders for plasma exchange here at MaxWell Clinic as well. We really use the AMBAR trial as kind of our general guide for where we go, because this data that we saw here was just unbelievable. So a little more information, because to answer the question of what is plasma exchange. So regenerative plasma exchange specifically is an innovative therapy that has the potential to slow down the rate of both brain and body degeneration. Whether your needs are autoimmune or cognitive decline, or you just want to boost your vibrant longevity, RPE, regenerative plasma exchange, has the potential to help you improve your daily function and address contributory causes. It is truly life-changing from the results that we have seen so far. How does this work? Why is that the case? Well, as we get older, no matter who you are, the more birthdays you accumulate, your blood becomes polluted with oxidized molecules and inflammation residue, just as a side effect of being alive. We like to refer to these in more simple terms as rusty and sticky molecules, because the oxidation and inflammation can kind of make that happen. So that can adversely affect both your brain and body because your microvascular system is impaired. And it's not as optimal as it could be. Since your blood is the river of nourishment for your cells, the health of your cells dramatically is influenced by the health of your blood. Through regenerative plasma exchange, we can remove certain harmful substances that are circulating in your plasma to nourish your cellular habitat and support your regenerative factors. So think of it this way. Plasma is the habitat of your cells, much like the rainforest is the habitat of a certain animal, or the woods is the habitat of a tree. Based on the health of that environment, if there's forest fires versus if it's a flourishing jungle, that's going to change the impact of the health of the trees or beings within that environment. The same is true for your cells. So when your blood is cleaned and the total load of oxidized molecules is decreased, meaning the plasma is shifted, it's much easier to nourish both your brain and your body. So we've got TPE versus RPE. There's a lot of letters. What does this mean? Is there a difference? Let's talk about it. So what is the difference between TPE and RPE? Well, therapeutic plasma exchange, also known as TPE, is the most common way in which plasma exchange is delivered worldwide. It is mainly used as a powerful treatment option for severe autoimmune diseases. It has been in practice for a very long time, typically in a hospital setting, more acutely. Regenerative plasma exchange, also known as RPE, is a patent-pending modification of TPE that was developed here at the MaxWell Clinic to optimize both the safety and the potential effectiveness of plasma exchange for multi-tissue regeneration. As we combat common age-associated degenerative processes like frailty, dementia, Alzheimer's, mild cognitive decline, at MaxWell Clinic, we do everything possible to improve both the safety and efficacy of the procedure. So RPE really systematizes these factors for safety and the data that we've collected so far to help us ongoingly modify our process in an effort to improve its effectiveness. RPE can also be utilized by these proactive individuals who are looking to potentially optimize their overall stem cell function by cleaning their cellular habitat. It's really exciting. Do you only offer RPE at MaxWell Clinic? We offer both. So Therapeutic Plasma Exchange, or TPE, which is used for conditions such as autoimmune disease and the treatment of acute toxicities, we absolutely do. RPE, also known as Regenerative Plasma Exchange, which is MaxWell Clinic's patent pending and trademark process for decreasing the potential side effects of TPE while individualizing replacement fluids and augmentation components to potentially optimize for stem cell activation. So what we do here is the main nuts and bolts of TPE, or Therapeutic Plasma Exchange, is performed. We augment that a little bit in our Regenerative Plasma Exchange process to help individualize replacement fluids and augment different components to have a better outcome or a more augmented outcome is our intention. So Regenerative Plasma Exchange at MaxWell Clinic, our experiences. How many plasma exchange procedures have you done? So what I'm doing, just to orient you here, at the very top and bold, these are our most common questions. So we're just going through those one at a time in different categories. So how many plasma exchange procedures have you done? Well, as of April 2022, we have completed hundreds of plasma exchange procedures at MaxWell Clinic for a variety of reasons: autoimmune disorders, cognitive decline, stem cell optimization, and long COVID, just to name a few. Has anyone with blank ever done plasma exchange at MaxWell Clinic? And insert in the blank, our new patient coordinator gets all kinds of questions about this. So while we don't keep a list for our support team of every patient diagnosis plasma exchange has been used for at MaxWell Clinic, what we can share is that we have used plasma exchange with patients dealing with everything from autoimmune to cognitive decline, and to those just wanting to boost their vibrant longevity. How would I know if it's right for me or my loved one then? Well, a consultation visit with one of our plasma exchange clinicians. This is why a consultation is so beneficial. What we do is we discuss your particular needs with our clinicians here to see if RPE is the right fit for you and your health goals. At MaxWell Clinic, we take personalized care very, very, very seriously, and our plasma exchange program is no exception, which is why every person, as they come through and they have an RPE consultation, gets a tailored and personalized order set and protocol based upon their goals. Have you treated anyone with Lewy body dementia? We do have experience with Lewy body dementia. The AMBAR trial, as we went through earlier, was completed on dementia patients, some of which may have had Lewy body dementia. Lewy body dementia is a clinical diagnosis, as the only way this type of dementia is confirmed is at autopsy upon death. Therefore, we believe regenerative plasma exchange is good for any type of Alzheimer's or dementia. This is also why we take all types of memory loss seriously. As we saw in the AMBAR trial, the sooner plasma exchange is performed, even in mild cases, the better the outcome. And our goal here is for more good days. Have you treated patients with Lyme disease with plasma exchange? This is a big one. So plasma exchange is not an indication for patients with Lyme disease at the present time. However, there are some reports that plasma exchange has been helpful in some individuals that carry a diagnosis of Lyme or have a diagnosis of Lyme that is recurrent and resistant to other forms of treatment. So plasma exchange may be beneficial for these individuals overall for other reasons, which would be determined through a consultation visit with our plasma exchange provider. And I highly encourage, if anyone is listening to this for themselves or a loved one and they have persistent Lyme disease, schedule a consultation with us, because there are so many things that we can do and guide even in the regenerative plasma exchange space that can be beneficial. Do you have statistical success or outcome information? Very, very common question. So at MaxWell Clinic, we pride ourselves on treating each individual with a customized program for health improvement. As I mentioned earlier, we are all about personalized systems medicine, and we really emphasize the personalized part of that. Regenerative plasma exchange may be one element of a treatment plan, and repeated plasma exchanges may be necessary depending upon the issue addressed. As such, all of our results vary from patient to patient, meaning we don't have apples to apples comparison to create traditional statistic analysis very easily because every single person has an individualized treatment plan. We really track individual patient outcomes. While we model after the AMBAR trial, we personalize recommendations for frequency, duration, etc., based on patient presentation from what we've learned to date through individual patient cases, and we tailor these plasma exchange order therapies to their unique needs and desires. We really focus on what do you want your health for? And our plasma exchange program is no exception to that question. We factor that in deeply whenever we're looking at what recommendations or frequency or settings would be best for this particular patient. At MaxWell Clinic, what sets us apart really is this personalized approach. And so as I previously mentioned, our regenerative plasma exchange program is no exception to that. There are a variety of ways that we track individual patient outcomes, such as through subjective symptom tracking, standardized cognitive assessments like CNS vital signs, mini mental status exam, MOCAs, microvascular function assessments like the glyco check, which is just an amazing test, specialty blood tests, as well as biologic age measurement and telomere assessment, to name a few. Since we practice truly personalized systems medicine, this tailored type of care doesn't easily allow for generalized statistical nature, as I mentioned. However, the majority of our patients find notable benefit from regenerative plasma exchange. And I can say that personally in overseeing, being one of the clinicians to oversee this program, the patient testimonials they could bring tears to your eyes. It's very, very moving. We also boast that we may be the highest success rate for peripheral venous access of any center in the United States. What does this mean? This means that we rarely have to have our patients have a central line or port placed in order to complete plasma exchange. This decreases risks and rates of infection tremendously. This statistic alone sets us apart and puts us squarely in one of the best standards of care for plasma exchange that exists. It dramatically decreases the complications that we see that are associated with central lines like infection and blood clots, making this procedure overall, on the whole, substantially safer. Do most patients who start this therapy see benefits and want to continue? Yes, 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 yes. Most patients who start RPE see benefits and continue the course of their personalized treatment recommendations time and time again. Is there another clinic that offers outpatient plasma exchange anywhere? MaxWell Clinic is the first and only outpatient facility in the United States dedicated to providing regenerative plasma exchange at the present time. So, regenerative plasma exchange procedure itself, your questions explained. Who can benefit from regenerative plasma exchange? Well, as more data emerges and clinical trials are performed, it is becoming very clear that neurodegeneration and diseases associated with aging, such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and frailty, have the potential for improvement with regenerative plasma exchange, as we showed from the data in the AMBAR trial. This is not a conclusive list, though, as RPE has the potential to improve daily function and optimize stem cell activity and longevity in many individuals, not just those with neurodegenerative disease processes. When we clean the plasma and the cellular habitat, we nourish the body and the brain. That is amazing for anybody and based upon your overall goals. How many treatments will I need? Well, each patient has different needs. Most patients begin with a short series of procedures, followed by less frequent ongoing procedures. This is highly dependent upon medical history, current symptoms, level of function, and ability to participate in the program. Our providers will give their ideal recommendations for frequency at your plasma exchange consultation, and then you and the program coordinator will work together to get that scheduled afterwards. How much plasma is removed during one procedure? Approximately 60 to 70% of your blood plasma will be removed during one procedure and then replaced by medical grade 5% albumin protein. We cannot remove 100% of the patient's blood because it's continually circulating during the procedure. So what is this albumin business we keep talking about for those of you who are not familiar? Well, albumin is something that your body naturally makes. The liver is a master producer of this protein, and it is a protein that keeps intravascular fluids inside vessels and prevents their leakage. It is synthesized as well as produced in the liver. So what we're essentially doing, as you can see from this image down here, is that plasma, 55% of the total blood volume, you've got your formed elements at 45%, that's your red cells, your white cells, your platelets. Those are the portion that from that original image get removed from your old blood and go back into the machine to get mixed with the albumin to go back into your body. The plasma itself is 58% albumin on its own right. This is something your body makes naturally. You've got globulins in there and fibrinogen. So fibrinogen is something that we track. It is also why we need to make sure there's usually about 24 hours in between procedures so that your body can re-equilibrate. And it does so very, very quickly. Albumin itself is the medical grade, and I just did a picture over here. You saw those bottles in the photos earlier. But what happens is it is sterilized. It goes through an FDA approved process. This is medical grade albumin, which is just down to the protein element in this fluid. And that is what is being replaced back into your body. So we're taking albumin out and then we are replacing it with albumin. A lot of people will ask, well, where does this albumin bottle come from? It does originate from donors. However, it is extrapolated, sterilized. There's a huge heat process and it gets stripped down to just the protein component as you see in this bottle that is then administered back in. A lot of the concerns that would happen if we were doing, donated plasma directly into your body, cross-contamination, disease, things of that nature are not of concern whenever we're using albumin. It's a part of the reason why it's so tricky and why we are not doing, young plasma or direct donor to human administration, because there's a lot of other factors and potential risk there. Do you replace this with saline and albumin or just albumin? So we get this question a lot. If you guys remember from the initial photo, the saline is the bag right behind, right behind the little bottle there on the image. The plasma is replaced with just the albumin mixed with your red blood cells, the same amount that was removed. So it's replaced in a 1-to-1 ratio. Saline is used to prime the lines whenever the machine is hooked up. And an even exchange of albumin for the plasma that we removed is made. While we typically replace with just albumin, we will at times add a saline bolus if needed, which is just a bolus means a little burst of additional fluids into your system for maintaining blood pressure homeostasis throughout the procedure. Do you use donor plasma? I know I addressed this a second ago, but our plasma is replaced with albumin. We do not replace it with human plasma at this time. What kind of machine do you use for plasma exchange? We use the Fresenius Amicus, which is the newest and most state-of-the-art apheresis device in existence. We love working with this device. They are FDA-approved machines that are capable of separating all types of blood products. Can a port be used to administer plasma exchange? Yes. If necessary, we can have a port placed. But MaxWell Clinic has one of the highest rates of peripheral access in the nation, as I mentioned before. We are very successful at using peripheral veins for plasma exchange. So for those of you who are not familiar with the language that I'm using there, peripheral veins mean when I look down at my arm, let's say in my little elbow crease, and I squeeze my arm and it pops up, or you've ever given blood before, it means taking a needle and sticking it in without having a line that's been implanted into your body already. It is when you arrive, you have nothing in your body, you sit in the chair, you are then stuck with a needle. That's what we're considering to be peripheral access. 98% of patients at MaxWell Clinic had their regenerative plasma exchange conducted using peripheral access only. We have a very high success rate of this, and it's something we take great pride in. Do I have to live in Nashville to have RPE at MWC? Well, while the majority of our patients are local, we do have several out-of-town patients who fly in on a regular basis to receive this treatment. Flying is not usually recommended on the same day as the procedure. However, it is possible if the procedure is completed in the morning. It is not contraindicated. If you have to have plasma exchange in the morning and need to fly that evening, that's absolutely fine. We more or less make that recommendation from a logistical. Also, if it's your very first plasma exchange, we wouldn't recommend flying that evening just because you may feel a bit fatigued. It's a new procedure. You're not really sure how your body adjusts. So we want to make sure that that is well planned for on the foreground. What side effects could be expected? And I'm happy to report that the side effect list is not very long, which is great. And all of the potential side effects, we have methods in place to mitigate and make people feel more comfortable. So it's possible to experience numbness or tingling in the nose, hands, or feet, and it'll happen around your mouth as well. And if this happens during your procedure, you'll just let your plasma exchange technician know. So while you're here with us, you always have a staff member with you. And they'll ask you repeatedly. We get kind of annoying about it. Like, are you okay? Are you warm? Are you cold? Are you feeling anything? And you'll just tell them, hey, I'm starting to feel a little tingling. What that is that's hypocalcemia. So that means your calcium just dropped a little too low, too fast. Your electrolytes shifting and mineral shifting during plasma exchange is completely normal. What we do when that happens is we just slow the rate down of the procedure a little bit, and that tends to go away pretty quickly. So it's nothing of acute concern to be worried about. The patient may also experience low blood pressure. What we do is we will often, as I mentioned, give a little bit of extra fluids to make sure that doesn't happen. We're checking your blood pressure about every 15 minutes during the procedure, and so we're keeping a very close eye on that. Headache, difficulty accessing veins. Our biggest side effect is getting stuck multiple times if we're not able to get good peripheral access. So at MaxWell Clinic, another thing that sets us apart is once you schedule your plasma exchange procedure, our TPE support team and clinical staff will reach out to you. We've got some supplements that we have you start ahead of time that'll help plump those veins. They'll give you instructions to do to help really set you up for the best peripheral access experience possible. A histamine response to the replacement fluid, so it's a little bit of an allergic reaction. Perfectly fine. A couple of the supplements that we give people ahead of time to prime their body is to try to decrease any sort of histamine response that might happen. We also have things here on hand if that does begin to happen, rashes or just feeling like, a little flush, we can jump on that right away. We take many precautions to limit the potential side effects, and we'll continually assess during the procedure to ensure safety of our patients. Those are really the major hitters as far as potential side effects that can happen during the procedure. How will I feel after a plasma exchange? Well, some patients report feeling an increase in energy, improved clarity of vision, subtle neurological function improvements. We had to put this story in here because it's just fun. We were amazed by this one particular patient recently who was noticing that before his plasma exchange, he was starting to type the incorrect word. So in his mind, he would want to type the word and he would type the word different. And it would, once he had plasma exchange, that corrected itself and lasted for 2 to 3 months after his plasma exchange. It was really interesting. Something really subtle. This is a high functioning human, doesn't have any major cognitive issues, but just that little tweak that he noticed. Improve erectile dysfunction, improve sleep quality and depth, improve mobility, improved emotional regulation the day of or after the procedure, just to name a few. However, we do recommend resting or light exercise or keeping exercise really light the day of the procedure to avoid any significant fatigue later. Our patients report feeling fatigue the day of the procedure sometimes just after they get home, as the body may be adjusting to the shift in electrolytes. So like we mentioned, rest and eating a well-balanced meal after the procedure. I wouldn't plan to train for an Ironman that same evening. Part of our post-care is to check in with every patient within 24 hours after a procedure. If your procedure, and that'll be by phone with one of our clinical team members here. If your procedure was on a Friday, this check-in would be the following Monday. So for this reason, we do not schedule first-time plasma exchange procedures on Fridays. How can you tell if it's working? Well, we track your progress by assessing how you feel and function, as well as often recommend blood tests and procedures that help quantify how biologically old you are. It is a really fascinating test to be able to see, okay, my chronologic age may be 42, but biologically and how I'm methylating things actually says I'm 48. I really need to work on this. And so what we can see over time after plasma exchange is actually an improvement in how biologically old people are. It's really, really fascinating. So these additional tests are best ordered and integrated into your plan of care when working alongside one of our MaxWell Care clinicians. So our plasma exchange program is really a single service line program. And what that means is when you come in for a consultation, the purpose of our consultation is really to assess eligibility and suitability for the procedure itself. Then whenever you come in, we always have one of our overseeing clinicians on site. However, and we'll check in with you every, couple procedures. We're always available if anything occurs or there's an urgent need or something like that, and we're available through portal messages. But as far as taking care of your long-term goals as a whole, integrating optimal supplements, what are other opportunities for foundational care for what you're looking to do, MaxWell Care is the way to go. We have an incredible team of clinicians who are highly experienced in functional and personalized systems medicine who can integrate and really coalesce not only plasma exchange and the things we're tracking there, but also your entire timeline and history and everything you've been through to date, additional testing and opportunities for improvement. It's the two together is really the secret sauce for our patients who tend to accelerate while doing this regenerative plasma exchange process. So some reported benefits thus far, in addition to what I've already mentioned, is improved exercise tolerance, improved cognitive function, as well as improved microvascular perfusion. If you proceed with regenerative plasma exchange, we will collect various lab values and data to research and track these observed symptomatic benefits. What lab work would indicate I'm improving? Well, this is really exciting. So we are actually setting up a study with a major university, brand new, hot off the press news, to study factors in the blood that are diagnostic with Alzheimer's disease. It will be a first of its kind study. That's something separate that we've got going on in our clinical research arm of our center, which is really exciting. But on a daily basis right now, we measure markers of brain autoimmunity and neurodegeneration. We also regularly test cognitive exams such as EMOCA, CNS vital signs, and the patient's subjective experience. When it's somebody who has cognitive decline, the family and those closest to them and their experience of how the patient is doing is also important. What you may notice if you come to us for regenerative plasma exchange and your main complaint is cognitive function, we'll most likely be doing the MoCA tests and CNS vital tests are really our neurocognitive assessments on a regular basis so we can see how you're doing over time. In the case of autoimmune conditions, we can monitor antibody levels in the blood in addition to patient symptoms to determine improvement. For optimization measurements, we really look at lab work to better understand mitochondrial function, telomere lengths, and biological age expression over a trajectory of time. There are many different ways we're able to track how patients are doing. MaxWell Clinic is so unique in that we work with over 35 specialty lab companies across the globe to have the very best diagnostic and tracking tools at our fingertips. I don't think we communicate this as well as we could in the fact that there's a lot of personalized clinics or functional medicine clinics that have access to more expansive testing, but they typically work with one or two labs. Working with 35 specialty lab companies is absolutely miraculous. And as a clinician, it's like being a kid in a candy store because we go, okay, whatever condition that is plaguing you or whatever goals you have, we can find a tool to assess, measure, and get to the root cause in the next level. And it's really something special and unique about being here at the MaxWell Clinic that I don't think it occurs in most clinics across the world. So patient resource utilization is something we take very seriously. And that means your money and funds, because we all, as our wonderful founder likes to say, we all have an unlimited number of desires when it comes to our health and a limited number of resources, whether it's time, money, energy, effort. So what our MaxWell clinicians are excellent at doing is discerning and discernment with which tests and tools would best track progress on each individual patient's goals. So part of what we do here is we say, okay, What's going to get us our biggest bang for the buck in your long-term trajectory? Where do we need to go? What do we need to measure? And that's why I'm working with a MaxWell Care clinician is also really imperative in this process. Do I need to fast for lab work for the RPE procedure or for the RPE procedure? Well, for our routine lab work and the normal procedure, you do not need to be fasting. You should eat a balanced breakfast and stay well hydrated, but you don't want to overhydrate the morning of, because when you're in the chair and you have the IV in both arms, you're not gonna be able to get up to go to the bathroom. So you want to just drink normally that morning and make sure you empty your bladder before you sit in the chair. But on the days leading up to it, just make sure that you're adequately hydrated. If any fasting blood work is needed, the nurse will inform you of this and assist you in scheduling the lab work. So our plasma exchange program coordinators will get you all that information. How long does the procedure take? It takes about 2 to 4 hours in total. What are the contraindications? So really interesting. And this is why we really harp on a plasma exchange consultation, because there isn't a lot of contraindications to plasma exchange whenever we're expanding it out in the regenerative space. So typical contraindications for therapeutic plasma exchange include challenges with venous access. If we can't access your veins, then we're not going to be able to do the procedure. And without placing a more central line. Actively septic individuals, so people who are really sick, who have organ failure, who are really infected, they just aren't stable enough most of the time to be able to proceed. A known allergy to albumin or heparin, that would be a contraindication, or any pre-existing hypocalcemia. So if you know that your calcium is really, really low, it doesn't mean that we can't figure something out and customize your plan, but it would be something that we need to have a long conversation about and look into a little bit further. Does plasma, this is a hot question of the day. Does plasma exchange shift immunity after previously receiving a vaccine? There is a potential transient decrease in the total antibody load of the patient after receiving plasma exchange. But I want to emphasize the word transient because this typically comes back up over time without acute impact on the effectiveness of the vaccines. If I do an RPE procedure once or twice a week, aren't you taking out some of the new plasma I just received? You know, what people will say to us is, wait a minute, this is not an inexpensive endeavor. And so you mean to tell me that like the good oil change that just happened, you're just going to take all that back out? Well, I want to explain this a little bit further because that's not exactly the case. So it's important to understand that while the clean albumin that's being put into the system is replacing oxidized and more polluted albumin protein, it's believed that the most important part of the plasma exchange is really what's removed, not necessarily the albumin being put back in. Let that sink in for a second. So plasma exchange is a very complex fluid. It's filled with lots of cellular messengers, inflammatory substances, fragments of DNA, proteins, toxins, really anything you can measure in a blood test. So it's the removal of these accumulated compounds that is the most important. Accumulated, keyword. While some of us like to use the oil change analogy as if we were taking out the bad oil and putting back in the good oil, it doesn't really best explain the repollution that occurs within the body within 24 hours of one plasma exchange procedure. So we like to use the lake and wetlands analogy. What does that mean exactly? Well, we can clean the lake as if the lake was your plasma and your blood. However, the wetlands that surround the lake, like all of your body tissues, will repollute the lake after the lake is cleaned. That's what we're talking about with accumulation. So whenever you have, let's say we've got a river here in this photo, and we've just put all this clean albumin in it. Well, all your body tissues have accumulated those toxins and oxidized molecules over the years of your life. And they, just like the wetlands, will seep all of that back into the freshly cleaned river or lake. And so it's repolluted. So this is why more frequent plasma exchange can be administered at the beginning to better gain maximal benefit, because we're having the opportunity to actually make headway on the total body burden, the total that is accumulated in your system versus just a one-time effort. I think truly that's why the AMBAR trial was so successful in showing that great jump there in the beginning when there was that burst done weekly, because they were able to get into the accumulation. With that said, some is better than none, and benefit is still gained by spacing them out, because a lot of times, back to the resource utilization conversation, it's not an inexpensive endeavor. And so we have to make that decision. So I don't want you to also think that you're not garnering any benefit if you're unable to, or it's not recommended to stack them a little bit closer together in the beginning. We have the opportunity to see the needle move more significantly by cleaning the lake back to back, so to speak, but we're working against progressive degeneration. So any type of clean out is beneficial to the system overall and how the engine runs. How do I know if plasma exchange is right for me? Like, this all sounds fantastic, but what about me? This is determined at your consultation. So determining safety and recommendation for the plasmapheresis procedure depends on the patient's health, medical history, reasons for seeking it out. We determine each individual's eligibility based on their unique case, which is why we always begin with a consultation visit. Plasma exchange is a relatively safe procedure, as we've outlined, with a low contraindication profile. Therefore, we don't have a list of strict contraindications at present, and we take each patient case by case, factoring in all aspects of their health history, as well as recent lab work if it's applicable. I like to do plasma exchange, but I know you guys have other procedures. Can you tell me if that'll be added in? Well, at MaxWell Clinic, we have a ton of ancillary supportive procedures. It's incredible, such as IV NAD, neurofeedback, IV ozone, hyperbaric oxygen chamber, and other therapies, just to name a few. Our recommendations are really truly personalized to each patient case, and the next best step would be for you to schedule a consultation so we can outline all those options. And a lot of times when we're doing these plasma exchange consultation visits, we're going to recommend what would be ideal. We're going to say, okay, if I had the full menu and I thought what would be the absolute best thing for optimization, here's everything I would do. But we can also highlight in there different optional things, that can be, because cost is a consideration. So we really work with people, and it's a conversation. So I've mentioned cost a couple times, so it's time to talk cost. How much does it cost? Drum roll. Regenerative plasma exchange is not inexpensive, as I mentioned, with the specialized equipment, costly materials, specialty staff, and time commitment. To make this innovative outpatient therapy more accessible to more people, we do provide it at less than half of what the charge would be in a hospital. Less than half. I have so much pride at the numbers that we're able to offer and how we are able to reduce this cost than what would typically be billed in an acute setting. It's incredible. Your plasma exchange consultation visit with a clinician is $950. $200 of that is able to be applied to your first plasma exchange procedure should plasma exchange be recommended and you choose to move forward. Each plasma exchange procedure is $4,900. So just for relative, to keep this relative, and why this makes me so excited is because when you have this procedure done in the hospital or more acute setting, or even in other outpatient facilities that offer this, that bill to your insurance, it can be billed anywhere from $9,000 to $16,000, typically within the $10,000 to $14,000 range. So to be able to offer this for $4,900, although I know that to some that can seem like a lot, is so incredibly exciting. It's unbelievable. The $4,900 for the RPE procedure will include the labs that are drawn immediately following the plasma exchange that we use to track the effects of the procedure. These labs, as I just mentioned, are only used to monitor the effects of the procedure itself. The labs that are drawn prior to plasma exchange to see how you are coming into the procedure are not included and can cost up to an additional $300. However, we do everything we can to keep that as low as possible. What happens if I start a plasma exchange procedure, but I can't finish it? Well, if the procedure is partially completed, anything less than 50%, we're only charging you a partial procedure fee, and that is typically around $2,400. If the procedure is completed at 50% or greater, the patient will be charged the full amount. If the procedure is unable to start due to IV access issues or anything else, the patient will be charged just the $600 setup and supply fee for the machine materials. Consultation questions. So I talked about this consultation visit, and so now we have to get into the details. So how long is the consultation visit? Our plasma exchange consultation visits are 30 minutes long and are all conducted via telemedicine, which is via Zoom. The purpose of the plasma exchange consultation visit is to determine eligibility and suitability for plasma exchange. Our clinicians will not be conducting a full case consultation, making supplement or other treatment recommendations at this time. We highly recommend our MaxWell Care program if you're seeking a comprehensive approach to optimizing your MaxWell. Who is my consultation visit with? Well, your consultation visit will be with one of our overseeing plasma exchange clinicians. This could be one of our physicians, Dr. David Hazy or Dr. Mark Lickey, or myself, nurse practitioner Lindsay Jost, or a combination of the above, depending on availability. Will I get a, there we go. Will I get a refund if I have a consultation and you tell me plasma exchange is not right for me? No, scheduling a consultation does not guarantee that plasma exchange will be recommended or ordered. The cost of the consultation is for the time with the consulting physician. It is a visit or clinician team to review the patient's case as well as the time for the visit itself. It's to determine if it's safe to order or recommended. In some cases, it's not recommended or felt to be safe to proceed with until further evaluation or testing can be accomplished. But we will help make those recommendations as far as to guide you in the next best direction. To better determine a root cause of the patient's symptoms, we do recommend our MaxWell Care program, as I mentioned. Plasma exchange is not a benign intervention, and when patients are experiencing debilitating symptoms without a clear physiological cause or path for a potential cause, it's important that further evaluations are completed prior to being able to determine if it's safe to do. What is the consultation cancellation policy? A 48-hour notice is required in order to receive a refund. Is the consultation only via Zoom or can I come in person? Currently, the consultation visits are only available via Zoom. How do I get started? I'm so glad you asked. Your first step is to schedule a consultation. Lindsay, stop telling me about these consultation visits. They're fun, I promise. Come join us. Our staff will also assist in guiding you to complete your new patient intake forms prior to your visit, because we have to have that information to be able to review your medications, your supplements, your medical history, what's going on with you, why are you here, what do you want your health for, and all those important questions. How do I schedule this amazing consultation visit? Well, you can call our clinic at the number provided below, the 615-370-0091 for those who are not looking at a screen, to schedule a call with our new patient coordinator, or you can schedule a call directly online through our website. Where, you might ask, would that be? On our website up here, MaxWellClinic.com, you can click on the Regenerative Plasma Exchange page, and if you scroll down, you will see this little image here where you can click to either schedule a call or send us a message directly. So let's talk about a couple online resources that you guys have at your interweb fingertips at any time. This is our Regenerative Plasma Exchange landing page. So if you go to MaxWellClinic.com and you look at other therapies, yes, therapies and services up there at the top, you can click on Regenerative Plasma Exchange, and this is the screen that you will be directed to. As you'll notice, there's a little button here to download our free Regenerative Plasma Exchange brochure. I highly encourage you to do that. It will expunge and go further into some of the details that you may still be wondering about after this talk. Additionally, if you scroll down on the same page, you will see 3 videos posted by our fearless leader, Dr. David Hazy, on Regenerative Plasma Exchange. We have one for autoimmune, one for cognitive decline, and one for vibrant longevity, our 3 most common buckets. And so you can get more information there, and he'll dive into all the details. There's also, if you continue to scroll down, a link for the TED Talk that he did previously on Hope for Dementia. And then we have a Bulletproof Radio feature podcast to listen to as well. There is also a blog post. So if you see MaxWellClinic.com, Hope for Alzheimer's up there at the top, I'm sorry, Hope for Dementia-Alzheimer's. We have a blog post that you can see both Dr. Hazy and I with one of our plasma exchange patients, get a couple more images of what that looks like, and you can get more information on that blog. Lastly, I want to make sure I included a little plug for the AMBAR trial and where you can find it in case you are a data-loving individual and want to dive into that a little bit further. So you can look at PubMed or you can Google search, and this is what you'll be looking for. AMBAR, an encouraging Alzheimer's trial that raises questions. Grifols was the company that sponsored that. And so feel free to look that up and dive into those details. It's just incredible. So now I'm going to close with any questions. I see a couple pop up in the Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and let's dive in. Hi, Mom. Thank you. That absolutely made me smile. Okay, and another question is, would you recommend a consultation for a 92-year-old who has dementia following COVID 16 months ago? Absolutely. Absolutely. There is a lot that we can do for the elderly patient population. And what we can do is we can look at how far along and how far progressed the dementia is. That'll make a difference in our recommendations, but it's absolutely worth having a consultation so we can dive in further. The long haul COVID symptoms are really interesting in how they affect the microvascular system, and plasma exchange, just as I described, and able to kind of clean out those long-term oxidized molecules and toxins and being able to clear a pathway from an inflammatory standpoint. The data that they're seeing so far for long COVID is really tremendous, and regardless of age. So yes to a 92-year-old with long haul COVID. Which toxins does the plasma exchange remove, for example? Well, it's kind of a catch-all, and I don't mean to be vague on that, but we've seen shifts in the metals, the mercury, your leads, your cadmiums, your things like that, because whenever you decrease that over time, a lot of those toxins are held in the tissue space. So when you clean the plasma, it does cause it to kind of go back in, but just being able to clear that is really useful. There's, from a cardiovascular health perspective, we know that plasma exchange will transiently decrease triglycerides, cholesterol, and things like that. It does tend to re-normalize and bump back up, but just having the opportunity for that to kind of have more free flow makes a big difference from a vascular standpoint. Michelle, I've got your name, so I'm going to get back to you if you can put in your email here. I'll get back to you with a little bit more specifics on the toxins as a follow-up question. Let's see, TPE didn't last very long when it first started, and it wasn't considered effective for the cost because of that. What has changed? I don't know if I understand that question. So therapeutic plasma exchange has been around for a really long time in the acute hospital settings, and been shown to be effective. The kind of age-old sort of acronym is, if you can't figure it out, apheresis it out. So when patients become really septic and acute, a lot of times they'll go to plasma exchange because it was seen to be effective. So I apologize if I don't understand that question, but not quite sure how to answer that. Okay, there we go. I worked in the ICU and we did TPE for scleroderma, and it just didn't last long. That's so interesting. Yes. So thank you for giving me a little bit more clarity. So in the autoimmune space, different than cognitive decline. Autoimmune, when we use therapeutic plasma exchange, we decrease the antibodies for a period of time, we increase quality of life, we increase stem cell activation. We actually have a number of scleroderma patients, one of which was unable to work and function and had some hand symptoms that is now able to go back to work just because of the symptoms being able to decrease. So it does come back. With autoimmunity, it doesn't cure the autoimmune process, but what it can do is it can downregulate the total number of antibodies to increase the stem cell activation to be able to allow the body. One of our principles here is that we believe the body was designed to heal. And I see that every single day. And so with a couple of scleroderma patients that I'm thinking of, that are now able to function in their lives because they've been able to decrease their total antibody load, the healing mechanisms are able to actually kick in. So it is a long-term procedure when it comes to autoimmune for maintaining and keeping up with quality of life. Unfortunately, it's not something that is kind of a one and done or a burst and then done. It typically is a maintenance, something that they have to do more often. So that's probably why. And I don't know if you were able to track patients long-term from the ICU standpoint. All right. Is there any part of the procedure covered by insurance? No. So we typically are, we are an outpatient, or out of insurance, out of network, I should say, cash pay practice here. The Therapeutic Plasma Exchange and Regenerative Plasma Exchange is, we do not submit to insurance directly. What we have found for patients who have autoimmune conditions, because cognitive decline and optimization are not traditional indications through insurance reimbursement for therapeutic plasma exchange. So even if you self-submit your bill, they will not reimburse for that. But if you have an autoimmune disorder, we have had patients who will pay for the procedure. They will take the receipt and an invoice that they can get from our office, which you can get those upon request at any time. And then they'll self-submit to their insurance and get reimbursed directly. I don't believe they get reimbursed for the full amount, but they do get reimbursed for a portion from what the feedback that we're getting. Will plasma exchange help with circulation? About how many sessions to see a change? Yes, plasma exchange does help with circulation. It is amazing for peripheral neuropathy. We've had a couple patients who, after doing more regular plasma exchange, had a tremendous shift in their ability to feel their feet, which can be a little disorienting if you're not used to being able to feel your feet. However, in a good way. So it does help with circulation. And so I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have a test called the glycocheck, which measures microcirculation. So in patients where circulation is something that we're monitoring, we will get a baseline measurement of your microcirculation, and then we'll track that over time with plasma exchange. So your symptoms are key, but then also we can track that through that testing as well. How long will a patient with cognitive, so last question, how long will a patient with cognitive decline have to continue doing regenerative plasma exchange? At $5,000 a session, we can afford it for months or years. What's the longest time you had an improvement last? Great question. So what we tell patients with cognitive decline, mild to moderate or new onset Alzheimer's, and what we've factored in and done a lot of cost analysis on, is that a year of plasma exchange, doing it, if we mirror it exactly to the AMBAR trial. So the AMBAR trial is once a week for 6 weeks, once a month thereafter. So if we do that for a year, the total cost for that out of pocket is less than a year of memory care or assisted living services. It is not inexpensive, however. So unfortunately, when it comes to a diagnosis of dementia, Alzheimer's, or severe cognitive decline, we're only going in this direction. And so in order to use therapeutic plasma exchange or regenerative plasma exchange to help to improve that, it is an ongoing therapy. So what a lot of patients and their families will do is they will do it initially, because our goal is more good days. Our goal is not to cure Alzheimer's with plasma exchange yet. Obviously, that is what we would love to be able to do. But right now, we aren't saying that we can cure it. But what we can do is improve quality of life for longer for a disease process that we know only tends to go in one direction, so that you can have more time at home with your loved ones, able to function at a higher level than they would be had they not done this therapy. So it's a conversation, and it's a lot to consider. But whenever you're dancing in that space of just knowing that they're only going to be going downhill, to have more good days with them it's just invaluable. It's incredible. And so would love to discuss that in more detail, looking at a very specific patient, their trajectory, their history, their labs, to see what kind of benefit we could gain. Thank you, everybody, for your additional questions. I hope to have given at least a little bit more context and understanding around regenerative plasma exchange and what it can do, and that most of your questions are answered. If you have any other ones, do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Have a great night.